Good morning, everybody, or if you're on the East Coast, good afternoon. My name is Stuart Ellis. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Charter School Capital, and am excited to have you with us today for Digital Marketing 101 for charter schools. This morning, we're quite happy to have with us two experts in the marketing and digital marketing arenas for charters. Kim Brater, the Vice President of Marketing for Charter School Capital, and Michael Barber of Barber & Hewitt, an expert in this particular area. The two people with me today are going to share their experience, expertise, and lessons from other industries now applied to the charter schools that we support, and frankly, all charter schools across America. I think some of the things that they have to share today are exciting enhancements to strengthen your organization and charter schools across America. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim and Michael and say, appreciate all you joining us this morning or for lunch, and look forward to this session to come.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm Kim Brater, and as Stuart mentioned, I'm VP of Marketing at Charter School Capital. I will let Michael introduce himself first, and then I'll tell you a little bit about myself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. As Kim and Stuart mentioned, my name is Michael Barber. I run a boutique digital marketing agency in Los Angeles called Barber & Hewitt. We specialize in working with brands that are doing about $1 million to $50 million in revenue, but have also had the chance over the last 5 or 6 years to work with a variety of different charter school-oriented brands. So we've had some really good experience in that particular arena. I've also had the chance to talk with Kim as well as some other industry leaders at a variety of charter school conferences throughout the country, as well at the national conference for the last few years as well.
Thanks, Michael. So again, I'm Kim Brater. I'm VP Marketing at Charter School Capital. I've been with this organization for a little over 4.5 years now. My background is in marketing and brand strategy. I ran an agency, a marketing agency in Portland, Oregon for 15, 16 years prior to coming to Charter School Capital, and now focus on the charter school market. We are a specialty finance company that supports charter schools around the country, and we see a lot of what's happening in the charter school landscape from a marketing standpoint. So what we're going to share with you today should help some of you with some knowledge and some actionable items to take back and deploy within your own marketing programs. So today we've got a pretty hefty agenda. We've got a lot of information that we want to share with you. We've got 5 different sections, and the last couple of things, we've got slides that you'll be able to access after the presentation on SlideShare. We also have a list of resources at the end of the presentation that will get you to some of the things that we'll talk about, some resources, and Michael and I can talk about those as we're going through the presentation today. So what is digital marketing? One of the first things that we like to start off with is to let everyone know that digital marketing fits in with your broader marketing strategy. And what I've seen with many of the charter schools that we've worked with, it varies in terms of where the school is at for their marketing strategy. Could be very robust. Could be that it is just very basic and it just runs the gamut. So when you're thinking about your digital marketing strategy, you do want to think about it in terms of your broader marketing and communications. But today we're going to focus on your digital marketing and not the broader marketing. So we just want to hone in on what's happening on the digital front. Michael, did you want to add anything here?
No, that's a perfect way to describe it.
Okay, great. So how do you define your vision online? So most charter schools will have some mission that they begin with, the mission of the school, what they're trying to accomplish. And then, most schools will talk about what their brand is, but they may not necessarily couch it in brand strategy terms. So one of the things that we like to talk about with schools creating their marketing message is that you really need to define what makes your school unique. What is it about your program and your school that is going to have interest within the community and get parents and students to want to enroll in your program over all of the other programs that are within your community? One thing that I've found that's very interesting within the education space in general, but within charter schools, is that it's very collegial and no one really wants to think about competition. But if you want to look at your student enrollment, students and parents have a choice of where they can send their children to school. So you are competing. You do have to think about the other programs that are within your market and how are you going to differentiate what you have to offer from other schools that parents and other kids are going to be looking at. What is it that you're trying to do? So what's the goal for your school? Are you trying to increase enrollment? Student enrollment is always very important. Are you trying to build awareness in the community? Do you need to expand your facilities, your footprint within the community? Are you trying to look at retention and retaining your students? Are you looking at recruitment for staff and teachers? What are the things that you're trying to accomplish, and how can defining your brand and applying that online help to accomplish your goal? And then you want to look at all of the channels that you're going to use to connect with your audiences. If you are trying to reach students directly, you're going to look at different channels to communicate with your students than you would with the parents, than you would with the community at large. So one of the things we're going to talk about today are different channels and how you will use those channels. And then one thing that's also very important is thinking about your budget. Most organizations don't have, a never-ending pot of money for any effort that they're going to deploy, especially marketing. So what's going to be the most effective and efficient for the dollars that you have and the goals that you want to meet? And then how are you going to measure results? And we'll spend a little bit of time today talking about measurement as well.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to what you just said, Kim, was thinking about the fact that you've got a tremendous amount of consumers that are making buying decisions online these days, and that trend is not slowing down. When they are making and making research decisions on whether it's purchasing a product that they want or looking at alternative education options for their children, most of those journeys, those starts of those journeys are happening on their phones or on a desktop computer, and that trend is not slowing down by any stretch of the imagination. So the importance, I think, for schools these days is to really be able to build those foundational elements up front, so as they grow over the next few years and you see more and more individuals going to the web to make these buying decisions or these research decisions, the school has got a foundation there that they can really leverage to drive enrollment in their programs.
Yeah, that's great, Michael. Good point.
So as Kim mentioned, you've obviously got a great, you've got your story to tell, and when you can bring that to life online, we wanted to talk about what are some of the tactics that schools can utilize to bring that story to life. So some of those things we're going to touch on over the next 40 to 45 minutes are looking at your website, search engine optimization, or what's called SEO for short, social media, so Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, email marketing, video marketing as well. And we're going to touch just a little bit on some of these other tactics that are available for schools, such as pay-per-click advertising, display advertising, and retargeting. We're going to keep those last three sort of high level because those do require additional budget, and there's something to think about as you get more sophisticated in your digital marketing tactics, but we will touch on them just so you have an awareness of what they are. So the first thing to talk about is your home base, which is your website, right? One of the things to note is over the last few years, primarily in the last 2.5 years, Google, which is where 80% of searches start on the web, has rolled out a lot of changes as it relates to how does it go about ranking your website in terms of where you show up on those search results pages when someone's actually putting in a key term or searching for something online. Lots of those changes have been because we've seen so many more smartphones and more on-the-go or mobile users. So what Google is trying to do is ensure that the experience for those on-the-go or those mobile users is fast and really relevant for that particular context. So they've made major changes to their algorithm. They have started to not only just favor sites that have a mobile or what's called a responsive design, which we'll talk to in a second, but they're also focusing a lot of their search results around the content that's on that site, content being copy or text, as well as images and video. So what Google is looking for these days is a site that works well on mobile, that has not only just content on it, but content that's freshened up on a fairly regular basis, that's relevant to the types of searches that people are utilizing these days. And to take advantage of those changes, schools have got to make sure they've got a website that leverages some of these newer technologies, as well as take advantage of the opportunity to talk about all the different things that their school is doing from a content perspective, writing blog posts, sharing images and video of what's happening within the school, because those are the types of things that Google likes to see. Anything to add to that, Kim?
Yeah, I would just stress the point that if you're thinking about all of the tools that you have at your disposal for executing on your marketing strategy, the website is got to be number one, because that is the window into your organization that everyone can access. And so typically the first point that someone will have, or the first touch that someone will have with your school and your program, is likely going to be online through your website. And if that experience doesn't represent who you are or the type of program that you offer, then that's a misfire. And so all of the other things that we're going to talk about today are also important, but if you could do one thing to enhance your marketing activities, it would be to make sure that your website is up to date and is cataloged by Google.
For sure, couldn't have said it better. So a couple of things to think about as you think about either redesigning or creating a new website for your charter school is ensuring that it's fully responsive. And what do we mean by responsive? So responsive is just a term we use in the industry that means that the screen or the viewing size that you can see the website in, whether it's on your desktop or on your smartphone or tablet, that actual website responds to the size of the screen so that no matter what type of device, whether that's a smartphone or a desktop or a tablet, all of that content can be consumed really easily by the end user or consumers in this perspective. The other big thing that Google is looking at, as well as a variety of different search engines, is that it's fast. We see a lot of schools that are on older hosting platforms that could be on platforms that are actually causing their search engine rankings to be lower because the site simply doesn't load quickly. These are a couple of the things that you're going to want to think about as you're redesigning your website or thinking about developing a new website for your school, to ensure that it's set up for what Google wants these days, as well as the other search engines are looking for, as well as it being set up for the future as well. So where do you start? A couple different website platforms that you can consider. Most of these are fairly well known, used by a variety of different big, mid-market to small brands. But we wanted to touch on just a couple that are really easy to leverage for schools. The first of which is Squarespace. If you're an NPR listener or have watched the Super Bowl in the last 2 years, you would probably know what Squarespace is. Very easy to use website building platform. They can fully host your website as well, meaning that they can not only just help you build that website, but also host it so that people can access it. Wix.com is another website development platform that's available for anyone to leverage, schools or otherwise. WordPress is what's called a content management system, meaning it's a platform that allows you to manage your website content. It will require you to go find a host. WordPress also does have hosting, but most WordPress sites are hosted outside of the wordpress.org domain, so you'll have to look for a host if you're going to leverage those platforms. All three of these have one thing in common, is that there's multiple templates and themes that can be supported by all of those platforms. So Squarespace has its own unique templates and themes that you can leverage that are a part of the ongoing monthly plan that you would pay for there. Wix also has a very similar set of themes and different colors and different layouts and things of that nature. WordPress, you're going to want to look for what is a WordPress theme. There are literally thousands and thousands, if not maybe even a million different WordPress themes that are out there these days that can allow you to bring to life that brand in a really visually interesting way, and allow you to customize things like fonts or colors or where images are laid out or how big text is or how small it is. All of them function in fairly a very similar way. So most of them at this point function very much like you would be editing a Word document or something along those lines. So, you know, copy and paste, highlight and make bigger and increase fonts and change fonts. All of them are very easy to use, you know, if you're just starting out thinking about creating a new website or redesigning an existing website today. What's also great about all of these platforms is that you can grow into them. So as your school matures, and you may have some in-house resources that would be there to help you design, develop, and work on copy, some internal marketing resources. There's a lot of additional development opportunities, website development opportunities here that you can do, sort of integrating it into your student enrollment platforms, things of that nature, that can allow you to stay on these platforms and really grow with them into the future. We also wanted to note that there are a variety of different platforms that are out there specifically geared towards schools. Admio is one of them. If you've been to any one of the charter school conferences, either within a lot of the state-based conferences and or national, Admio is always there. They have a variety of really interesting, different feature sets that are available for schools, and really build and develop their platform around what would help schools. From a cost perspective, really depends on a variety of different features that you may be selecting, but any one of these platforms starts from a free option all the way up to potentially $30, $40, $50, or $100 per month, depending upon which particular plan you're selecting. But all of these can give you a really great home base to start from. Anything to add to that, Kim?
No, that was great.
Okay. So some things to think about as you're designing your new website. We wanted to give you some questions to think about as you're going through this process and trying to answer or trying to ask and understand what's the right questions that I should be asking. The first of which is around design. And this is this idea of what does the layout look like, right? How do we want to bring our brand to life? How is color and text used? And how do we bring those visuals that are happening within our schools, whether they are images or videos, to life on the website? So some questions to think about as you're thinking about what does the website look from a design perspective. Innovation. Does this website look like a template, or is it original and really brings that uniqueness of the school to life? All of the platforms that we just suggested are going to have a variety of different templates that any number of different organizations, schools, or otherwise could take advantage of, meaning that your website could look very similar to another organization that's out there. The good news is that all of those platforms also allow you to customize all of them to the hilt. So you can change font weights, you can change font sizes, you can change colors, you can change different sizes of images and logos and all these things to really customize and make it look like your brand. You're going to want to make sure that you take the time and invest that time and or potentially dollars working with the designer to really bring that brand to life of what your school feels like. I think this really helps bridge a connection from how a parent's looking at you and understanding you from an online perspective, and then when they actually get into the school, does it feel like a consistent experience, right? So if your school is really jovial and happy, it's bringing those types of visuals and tone and copy onto the website so they feel that particular sort of feeling when they come into the school, right? What are those things they're going to do to make it feel like the brand itself? Content is also going to be an important area for you to focus on around the site, not only just launching it from the very beginning, but Google likes to see that you are posting relevant, fresh, and new content. So think about what you're going to do to try and keep the content on the website freshened up on a regular basis. We're not talking every single week here or potentially every single month, but we're talking about having some sort of plan to make sure that we're updating copy on a regular basis, potentially posting blog posts or posting things about events that may be happening about the school and things of that nature. Well, another thing to think about is the technology that's behind the site. Do the pages load promptly? Are you on a fast host? Are you leveraging a platform such as Squarespace or Wix or GoDaddy or something along those lines that allows your site to load as fast as possible? Because Google can reduce your rankings based on the fact that your site is simply slow, right? And that's, Google's mission is to make sure that the end user experience, the person who's searching, has a really good experience on the web. So they want to serve websites that are really fast for those users that are on the go or using their phone. Do all of the hyperlinks and those types of URLs work on the site? Google's crawling through your text and your buttons to check if those URLs are working or not. So just making sure that you've got the appropriate links on there and those links are going to active websites. Interactivity is also a thing to think about. There's a variety of different things you can do from an interactive perspective on the web today. You're really not limited if you're trying to design something that allows somebody to take a look at your school and get to know different facets of your school. But what are you including to make it more than just text, right? Videos, photos, hyperlinks, potentially stories about students or stories about parents that have brought their students to your school and the impact that it's had. So what do you do that goes well beyond just the text-based content? And the last thing to think about is ease of use. There's nothing more frustrating, as I'm sure we've all experienced, when we don't know how to use a website because it's not laid out well, or we can't search within the website, or we can't navigate specific pages that we would care about. So just making it really easy to use, leveraging things that you would see in other different websites. And most of the platforms that we've suggested offer templates that have been designed by really great designers who know how to design for the web. So you're typically getting a template that will work really well. It's just your job to spend the time and energy designing it and making it look and feel and exude some of those assets, some of those elements of your brand. Any additional questions you'd add there? Yep.
Yeah, there's a question I think that fits in well here, and the question is around regularly updating your site or the content on your site. So the question is, how often is good practice? What's a best practice here?
So a best practice here is to be sharing what's new and relevant to the school. Google's not going to tell us like, hey, here's the number of things you need to be sharing, or here's how often. Google looks at about 550 different things on your website to determine where you would rank based on, what type of phrase or what type of sentence someone is searching. But a rule of thumb here is to keep it fresh. And so when I mean keep it fresh is if there's something happening at the school that would be relevant to the type of audiences that you're looking for, and keep in mind that, parents are going to be looking for content, or students are going to be looking for content at those times when they're going to be making these decisions. So we're talking about that back to school period, we're talking about change of semester period, we're talking about enrollment periods, re-enrollment periods. Those are the times when people are going to be doing research. So as it relates to your particular audience, in this case, charter schools, think about those times of year when people are going to be looking for that sort of content, and utilize those time periods to back into dates to make sure you've got fresh content for those types of those peak periods when people are doing this research. Just keep in mind that Google looks at basically and re-indexes the whole web on a daily basis. So when you are putting new content on the website, Google's seeing that sometimes instantaneously, but definitely within a few hours, and 100% within 24 hours. So if you're putting something up, it's getting indexed and re-indexed by Google almost right away these days. So you don't have to worry about any sort of lag time here, if you will, as you're backing into some of those calendars or those timelines of when you want to be putting up that fresh or new content. But if you've got something to talk about, then bring it to life on the web, whether that's through a blog post or or through a variety of different ways that you could, have a page on some sort of event that happened at the school, or some, big new ranking or something along those lines.
So another question, Michael, that I think is relevant here that just came in is whether or not updating Facebook and Twitter and feeding that onto your main page, does that count as updates or fresh content to the site?
So anything that's coming into a widget, usually, especially if it's coming from social, is not counted as relevant content on the web. So these are like widgets where you'd have an embedded sort of Facebook dialog box that may be feeding in content from your Facebook page or from your Twitter profile. Usually those items and the weight of those items and the relevancy of those items is categorized towards those social networks, meaning you're still getting, if you will, rankings for that content that you're sharing on social, because Google does index Facebook. It also does index content that's shared on Twitter, but not necessarily it's creating opportunities for your .com. It's creating opportunities for Twitter and Facebook to get indexed for those search results. So one of the things that we always suggest to clients is, your owned area, your website, because you own your own .com. Use that as a place to put those assets, but also distribute them into the channels where people are following you, such as Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, because we know people are spending a lot of time in those social networks and are going to those places to make decisions and about where they're going to, send their child to school, or what the environment of that school may look like.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. One last thing to think about as it relates to your website, if you're worried and want to understand, hey, what does Google think of my website, is they've actually put out a free tool that anyone can use, your school or yourself, or whenever you need to use this. It's called PageSpeed Insights. If you actually Google PageSpeed, you will get to this website. We've also hyperlinked it in the presentation as well, that we'll share within about an hour or so after the presentation, that you'll be able to click on this and go to PageSpeed Insights. But it's very easy to utilize. You can also do it on your phone or your tablet as well. You don't have to be on a desktop or PC. You put in your website URL, and you can actually go out and test your website to see what Google thinks about it. They'll give you a score from 0 to 100 on your web-based or your desktop size site, if you will, and then they'll give you a 0 to 100 score on your mobile website. Not only will they give you that score, but if it's not a great score, and Google's looking for usually about an 85 or above on that scoring system to consider it a good enough site, they will give you all the things that they would like to see you do to make that site faster and more responsive for them. So they'll give you tips that if you're working with a developer, or you're working with an agency, or you're working with, potentially a family member or a student's mom or dad that may be helping you with these types of opportunities, they'll give you things that can help make your site faster. It's a really great tool to utilize, and 100% free to get an idea of what Google thinks about your website. Oops, sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. Next thing to think about is search engine optimization. So you've built the home base, right? This is not a field of dreams scenario these days as it comes to search. When we're talking search engine optimization, we're talking about how do you go about optimizing your website for those organic or those free listings that are on Google. So you typically have, as the screenshot shows you on the right-hand side here, there are two different areas of search results, if you will, paid and organic. The paid listings come up the top. They're usually in some sort of highlighted, or they will say promoted or ad next to them, depending upon which particular device that you're on. And then those free listings, or those organic listings, as we call them, are below those paid listings. These are the areas that we are talking about as it relates to search engine optimization, or are those free or organic listings. The goal here, that Google's looking for is to really produce the best user experience. What do we mean by that? Is it fast to load? Does it have easy navigation? Does it have relative content in terms of the actual search term, phrase, or sentence that someone may be actually searching for? And does it load well from a mobile or responsive perspective? So and that's just a couple of different things that Google's looking at to determine if you should be in those free or organic listings. So here's just an example from an SEO perspective, just so you understand how this flow works. If someone searches Inspire Charter Schools, you can see this is the actual listing that shows up for them, their website. Person can click on that particular listing. In this case, it's more on a smartphone here, and they're actually taken over to where they could either enroll or get to know the school a little bit better, if you will. There's also other opportunities well beyond just those organic listings. Google provides a platform called My Business. What My Business allows you to do is ensure that not only you're ranking for your website, but you're ranking for other things such as your location, right? Most parents and our students are looking to go to a school that's within a certain geographic radius. So they're going to be searching for Phoenix charter schools, or they're going to be searching for Cleveland charter schools or Sacramento charter schools. And you'll notice that Google customizes your search results based on the term that you're looking for. So when someone's utilizing one of those sort of geo modifiers, when they're taking a city name or a zip code or something along those lines, it's important to not only get your website ranked for those terms, but also to make sure you're ranking within places like Google Maps, because those are places that people are looking for and searching for different opportunities. What My Business allows you to do is put in your address and verify it. It allows you to add images. It allows you to have opening times, all these different opportunities and content that people are looking for. So it's just another way that you can not only just be ranked for your website itself, but also things like locations. For those individuals in the room or in the webinar, so to speak, that have got potentially a network of schools that you're working with, this is not just a place on My Business where you can have one listing. You can have 1 to however many businesses you own. I will say this: if you're a network of schools that's starting to get into the 30, 40, 50 size network, it's probably easier. There are a variety of tools and platforms out there, such as Yext, that can make these sorts of location-based results, if you will, and managing your network of schools and the locations and times and things much easier, and will push them out to different opportunities. But for those individuals in the room that are just starting and or have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 schools, you can utilize My Business as well as the individual map listings platforms to make sure that you're showing up from a local perspective. Again, that's called Google My Business. If you just go search My Business, this will be the first result that will show up. We've also linked this particular slide to that website should you want to go out there and register your school. But just keep in mind that this idea of search engine optimization is not just for your website itself, but all of those other opportunities that Google gives you to show up, such as maps in this particular case. Anything to add to that, Kim?
No, I think that's great.
Okay. And as the slide says here, it's a way to put additional info on maps, and so that students can find you, no matter if they're looking within some sort of map application that may be on their phones or on their tablet, but also on the web too. Because if you've noticed, one of the things that happens these days when you're searching within a browser, whether you're on your iPhone or Android or otherwise, it often asks for your location. Once they've got that location and they're using that data almost completely anonymously, unless you're logged into Google or something along those lines, to serve you more relevant results that are in a certain geographic radius. So these are just areas where you can get an additional foothold that are just beyond your website as well.
Yeah, I would add that the My Business piece is really important, and if you have not done that for your school yet, that should be one of the first things that you do. When folks are online searching and they type in information, it can be an easy way for them to get direct access to your information about your school and to your website and your location as well.
Yeah, great ad. The last thing I will say as it relates to My Business is this is another place where people can review your school. So similar to a variety of review sites out there, if you've searched for a restaurant and you've pulled up that restaurant listing on Google and seen reviews, once you're in My Business, this is another area where reviews can happen. So if you do have a map listing, you're going to want to make sure, if you don't have control of it or ownership of it, get control of it so that you can respond to those reviews and manage them. And also just be aware this is going to be another place you're going to want to monitor for those types of reviews that could come in, good, bad, or otherwise. So some tips to think about as it relates to your school, we wanted to give you just a few, is to pick 10 to 15 relevant keywords with at least some search volume. We're suggesting here about 3,000 searches. So what do we mean by those keywords? These could be single words like school. They could be a string of words or a phrase, if you will, like charter schools. They could be something with a geo modifier, such as Phoenix Charter Schools, or they could be questions. And those are things that you're seeing a lot of these days. So, you know, back in the day, you used to optimize for not only just your brand terms, so your brand name itself, but what we call non-branded terms that would have things like geo modifiers, such as Phoenix Charter School. But what people are doing these days, a lot of, is making longer sentences, longer search phrases, because they're utilizing their phones and they're sort of utilizing a lot of more natural languages when it comes to searching on Google. So think about other phrases that people may be utilizing, such as what's the best charter school in 90210, for lack of a bad zip code to utilize. But, you know, what are the best charter schools for artists in Cleveland? These are all the types of phrases and or keywords, if you will, in quotes, that people could be searching for. So how do you determine those search volume? Google has their keyword tool. If you just Google keyword tool, and we'll make sure it's linked in to this presentation, you can go put in a variety of terms. It will actually tell you, hey, here is the search volume that happens with that term at both a local level as well as a global level, so you understand the search volume that's happening there. The reason why we say optimize for 10 to 15 is you've only got so much content on your website. You're not going to want to optimize for 100 or 200 as a school, unless you've got a whole different network, and all of those schools, of course, have got their own websites. But you've got to make sure that you're utilizing specific relevant keywords that would work for your school, because Google can see through any sort of smoke and mirrors, or see you trying to optimize for more terms, or what we call keyword stuffing, if you will, and trying to optimize just for the sake of optimizing. And the reason why we say this particular search volume is because you want to sort of fish where the fish are if you're going to spend the time optimizing your website for these key terms, because it would be worth basically nothing in terms of added value for you from a search perspective if there wasn't at least someone searching for these types of terms. So don't just optimize for terms that have no search volume, because Google knows what the search volume is for these terms, and they're going to tell you if someone's actually searching or not. It's also a really great way, just as sort of a side, a funny or comical thing, you often will get potentially, think that people are searching for you for certain types of terms, right? And then go find out that actually no one uses those terms, and they could be using something very different. So that keyword tool that Google puts out there for free for any brand to utilize allows you to go make those determinations of, number one, what terms do we want to utilize, as well as what particular search volume do those terms have. The second thing you're going to want to do is now take those 10 to 15 relevant keywords and insert them into, or get them into your content naturally, as if you were having a conversation. So what do we mean by that? There was a behavior back in the day, many, many years ago, where we would simply just try and throw in the key terms, even if it didn't really make natural or make sound like a conversation. But Google's smart enough these days, and when I say Google, I'm talking Google as well as all the major search engines, Yahoo and the like. They're smart enough these days that they can tell if you're doing those things. So just try and work those keywords naturally into the copy or the content of the website that you've got for your school. Make sure you're writing original, quality, and educational content for the site, and do not duplicate content. So if you've got a network of schools and you're simply reusing the content from that school and just changing out geo modifiers or changing out school names, that could actually be hurting you. Google does not like to see duplicate content on the web. In some extreme cases, they could actually blacklist your site and not list your site at all if you've actually just stolen content from another site. So make sure that you're writing original, quality, and educational content as it relates to your school, so that someone understands what your school is about. You're bringing that brand to life, as well as ensuring that you've got that original content on the website. One of the things that you can do to ensure that your website is being indexed by Google, or being viewed by Google, if you will, very easily is submitting what's called your sitemap to Google Webmaster Tools. It's that URL. You can get access to it right below by clicking that once we send you the slides. What Webmaster Tools does is gives Google, think of this as like a direct telephone line to your website. So, you get to tell Google, here is where our website is, here's our sitemap, which tells Google, here are all the pages that are on the website. All of the tools that we've shown, Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, all have opportunities to generate that sitemap, and they'll give you the URL of where it lives so that you can submit it to Google. And essentially, as I mentioned, it's like a direct phone connection to your website. So when you make a change from a copy perspective, Google sees that right away, and they will go in and re-index your website from a relevancy perspective. It's also a great way to check that all of your website pages are being indexed. There are, for any number of reasons, there could be a reason why a certain page is not being seen by Google or that Google doesn't like it. You can check to ensure all the pages on your website are being seen by Google utilizing Webmaster Tools. The other thing that you can do is Google also looks at what are called inbound links to determine the authority of your website. So what do we mean by inbound links? These are other websites that are linking to your website. So this could be coming from a newspaper website that's written about your school. It could be coming from a parent that's written about your school on their blog. It could be coming from a variety of different places. There are also opportunities out there that are called education directories that are either .coms or .orgs to get them to link to your website. But the big tip here is that if some other organization, whether it's a newspaper, a TV station, is writing about your school or talking about your school, get them to link back to your .com because that does help generate relevancy for the key terms and generate authority for your website to try and increase some of those rankings. Anything to add there, Kim?
No, I think that covers it well.
Perfect. So social media is another great tactic that you have in your toolbox from a digital perspective. Social is really great for interacting with the community and potentially advocates in real time, right? When we think of social, we're talking about all of these major platforms that are out there, from Facebook to Twitter to Snapchat. We're going to talk about some individually in a second. But this is a really great way to connect to your audience. It's also a really good way for parents, advocates, and students to see what's happening within the school on a daily basis. I'll also say this, Twitter links from Twitter, content from Twitter, or it's on Facebook or the like, those also do help generate inbound links for your website. Google sees when those tweets and or Facebook updates are being linked to your website, so it can help from an inbound linking perspective. It's a really great way to connect to potentially very different audiences. It's also a great way to get your school active and engaged with different events that may be happening in the charter school space, such as National School Choice Week, or during when you're participating in conference and at events and things of that nature, to be able to have those real-time opportunities to connect with your audience. One also thing to think about is all of these platforms have to make money these days. So there are opportunities, really interesting opportunities to advertise on these platforms, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, as well offers advertising opportunities these days. What is great about these advertising opportunities is the data that all of these social networks have on individuals is incredibly rich, so that you can target potentially students, advocates, parents, based on demographics, potentially their spending behaviors, based on location, based on down to zip code, based on when they're actually in an educational research frame of mind. You can do so much these days from a targeting perspective. And because of that, you can potentially spend a really small sum of money to target potential students and or parents that would be looking for a new school for their children in really interesting ways, from a zip code perspective or a certain type of demographic or a certain type of individual that you're going for to generate enrollment at your schools. One thing to think about as it relates to social, and we could spend an entire hour here, and it's probably worth an additional webinar, but think about leveraging not only just the old school, and I say that in air quotes, but also some of the newer platforms that are out there. So you've got the behemoths that have been out there for a long time, Facebook and Twitter. You've also got newer-ish players on the market, such as Instagram, although Instagram these days has 500 million users, so it's not so much a new player anymore. But Snapchat, is a newer platform that's out there that's got about 300 million users on it. You could also look at LinkedIn as a place to generate interest from an advocacy perspective, potentially with community advocates or political advocates or something along those lines. I'd also recommend that you look beyond just the sort of tried and true social networks and look at things like review sites. One of those is greatschools.org, which, if you're not familiar, is a rankings and review site for schools. Think about all these other places where people are having these conversations about your school. It doesn't necessarily have to be within the social networks. Those are places you're going to want to monitor and make sure you have an active presence on.
Yeah, I would add that. Yeah, I would add that one thought that it's great to be on all of these social channels, and if you have the wherewithal to do that, that's great. But knowing that most charter school marketing teams are stretched very thin, it would be better if you focused on one or two key social channels where that the bulk of your audience is, and implement those channels and execute on those channels really well, so that you have a stream of ongoing content that you're posting and you really engage with people on those channels, versus trying to be on all channels possible but really not doing enough to engage with people. Social media is all about the engagement, and if you're not engaging with folks on those channels, then you're really not getting the benefit or the value out of using the channel.
Kim, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, it looked like I had disconnected for a second. Yeah, that was a great ad. I think, again, this is a depth of conversation versus a breadth of conversation, so that choose the ones that work well for your school and generate results for your school, and focus your time and effort there. You do not need to have a presence on every social network, but you at least need to go secure your profiles, right? Doesn't mean you have to participate there, but if you've got, any one of these platforms could become much bigger in the future, so at least go get and secure your profile name or your school name on these platforms. Doesn't mean you have to be there, right? But Kim that's such a great suggestion, is make sure you focus on that depth of conversation, because this is about engagement. It's about giving people the ability to have that one-on-one conversation. Just some things we wanted to give you sort of an update on, some numbers, because these are often helpful for conversations as well, to understand just the size of these platforms. Facebook, which touches, when we say Facebook, we're not just only touching on Facebook.com itself or the application, but Facebook not only owns WhatsApp, which is a really interesting opportunity from a messaging perspective to be connecting with parents and or students, but 1 billion users on messengers a month. And then, as I mentioned before, Instagram, which just came on the scene in less than 5 years ago, is now at almost 500 million users. And we're seeing a lot of schools do really interesting things from an Instagram, not only images but video perspective, to share what their students are doing on a daily basis. So just some idea from a breadth of all these social platforms that are out there. Another opportunity, which is one that you definitely should put into the mix, I'd almost put this above social at this point, but definitely social would follow right behind, is email marketing. Email is just one of those tried and true digital tactics that's been out there for years and years and years, and people still understand, and they're still really addicted to their inboxes. It's a really great way to keep not only your brand and your school top of mind to the audience, because they're opting in to receive these updates. It gives you a variety of different things that you can utilize to send into people's inboxes, whether you're talking about the school or outreaching for donations, or generating interest around re-enrollment periods. Having an opt-in subscriber can really provide a lot of tangible benefits, not only because people are still reading email at just voracious rates that they ever have done before, but also one of the interesting things that you can do these days is you can take any of those email addresses that you have on parents and or students and actually utilize those email addresses to target different audiences from an advertising perspective within Facebook or Gmail or a variety of different places. But as you know, email allows you to create personalized messages and or newsletters that you can send to potential students, leads, customers, and really target those different audiences if you're segmenting your list really well. It's also extremely cost efficient and easy to implement. Most of the platforms that are out there these days, we're going to touch on one or two of them, are just very simple to utilize these days. Sort of a WYSIWYG or what you see is what you get type of editor. Functions like a Word doc, allows you to have images, allows you to have different fonts and bring your brand to life in those email campaigns. It's also really easy, from a sharing perspective, for you to be able to push out emails and then have people forward them on to friends and family, obviously, because that behavior is, something they've become accustomed to over the last sort of 10 to 15 years of email being a really dominant part of our lives. And we don't see this slowing down. You're actually seeing a bit of an email renaissance. We're seeing better engagement rates from email than we ever have done before. It's just one of those tried and true tactics that you definitely should have in the mix from a marketing perspective. So make sure you're gathering opportunities to collect email addresses on your website. Make sure you're gathering that during the enrollment period with parents and or students so that you can get access to those emails. Just make sure you're following CAN-SPAM compliance, meaning you're asking for that opt-in. As long as you ask for that opt-in during a conversation on some sort of registration form, whether that's happening during your enrollment period or whether it's happening on your website, you are allowed to market to those individuals once you have that authorization.
So one thing I would add, one thing I would add is that many schools, both in the charter space and private and traditional district schools, are starting to use Google and create their own Google email lists for parents who are at the school, who have students at the school. One thing that is interesting about that is that it creates an individual community for the school itself, and it contains everyone into specific lists, right? So, for example, one school that I've seen do this really well, they segment out their current enrollment, so their current students. They have a full list which they can email out to. They have lists by class. So individual messages can go out to parents of individual students in the classes, and so on. And it's a really interesting way that schools are starting to use Google for that. That's not to say that you can't have email lists and manage email lists on your own or through whatever email platform that you currently have. I just found it interesting that schools are starting to pick this up as a way to access to the parents in the community, most of whom already have Gmail accounts, and so they're just either tagging on to their own Gmail account or they're creating an account that's specific to the school itself. One other point that I wanted to make is that many schools are using the email that's offered through any student enrollment platform that they currently have, that they're using. And so that's another way that you can link what you're doing from email perspective to the list that you already have within your enrollment system. So that's another way to look at it.
Yeah, those are great ads. Some email tips to think about as you're either going to engage in this channel or if you already are, just some things to think about. Almost everyone reads email on their phones these days. We know that at an aggregate, more than 50% of people, when they open an email campaign, is on their phone, meaning that you've got to make sure your email is readable and all the content can be viewed. So just taking advantage of a lot of the newer templates that are available in any one of your email systems and ensuring that it can be seen on a mobile device is really important. People don't want to pinch and zoom as it relates to email. There's only really two things someone does on a phone when they pinch and zoom, and that's a map and an image. Anything else, and you're making them work too hard. So some things to think about in that. If you can let images do the talking, that's great. People's phones have beautiful screens. Allow those images to come to life through your email. Copy and text within email should be a minimum of 15-point font. Your headline should be a minimum of 30. And any button that you're sending or a call to action, get rid of utilizing those old sort of blue URL hyperlink text and use a button that's at least about 150 to 150 pixels so that somebody can use their big old thumbs to click through to whatever you're sending them to. Make sure you're following CAN-SPAM compliance. Technically in the United States, you can send an email to every single person once. After that, you've got to get opt-in. You've got to get them to opt in, whether that's giving you it through their website or through some enrollment form and the like. And then always making sure you have your organization name, email address, and website. Most of the platforms just insert these in for you today. And always give people a really easy way to unsubscribe if they don't want to hear from you anymore. We're not going to give a total platform recommendation here. We're simply showing MailChimp as an option for you to consider, because MailChimp will give any organization that has 5,000 or fewer contacts in their list or fewer opt-ins in their list a free account. They'll also do a variety they give almost their full feature set for that for almost next to nothing. Now, this is free in the sense of pure cost, right? You've still got to spend the time and the energy and investment in human capital, if you will, to actually design and set up the account and design your emails and be sending them out. There is a ton of email service providers out there, whether you're working with an enrollment provider that already has it, or whether you're working with the likes of Constant Contact, Campaign Monitor, any number of platforms that are out there. All of them basically do the same things these days. I'll only say this: I think MailChimp is a really super simple platform to utilize. It's very user-friendly. And given the cost implications for schools, this is one that they can sort of grow into and see how email works for them. Another great tactic to utilize is video. More than ever, the reason why video is important is because people like watching videos. We're seeing year-over-year growth of people watching online video by 80%. It's just exponentially growing. Video provides a really interesting way for you guys to bring your school's environment and what's happening on a daily basis to life in really interesting ways. We just want to touch on a couple key things as it relates to video. Make sure you're not only just sharing it on your website, but you've got a YouTube channel where you're hosting those videos. YouTube is the #2 search engine right behind Google. So when someone's looking for things, it's good to have a presence there. Make sure you've got your videos, if you're doing anything from a video perspective, on YouTube. Sharing those videos through social media is a great way to get traction. Facebook is rewarding video content. In other words, they want people to engage with video content because they know people like looking at it. So Facebook is giving video an edge, whether that's live video or whether that's recorded video. They will put that sort of video content into people's news feeds more often than they would do a plain image or a plain text update, because they know people like looking at video. Now, video doesn't have to be pricey, right? It can be done on an iPhone very easily or on an Android phone very easily these days, but we just wanted to give you and touch on a couple options. You've got things like a high production value. This comes from Success Academy, which is I believe a New York-based charter school network. We're not showing you sound, but you can see the video quality here, right? There's a decent investment that's made into these types of videos, but the opportunity here is that you could have not only just potentially a really great 1 to 2 minute video about your school, but you can take some of these segments and utilize them for 30 seconds with a 30-second spot elsewhere. You could use it on your website. You can take 15 seconds and utilize it from a Vine video, or you could take 60 seconds out of it and use it as an Instagram video. So you've got these opportunities from a high production value. Budgets for these are going to range, but a good sort of rule of thumb here is you're probably talking about a minimum investment of $5K. Maximum investment could be 20 to 30, depending upon what sort of video you're leveraging. But these are for these types of videos from a high production perspective. You also have these animated or sketch videos that are very popular as well. You can work with local colleges or with a local graphic designer to bring these to life. But this is showing off, what is a charter school in this case. These are other really great ways to bring video to life to sort of show potentially the different features or the different things that make your school unique. The last thing is a lot of short video, right? So this is another example that comes from Success Academy. Short video is a huge and booming area. You've got opportunities for up to 60 seconds on Instagram. You've also got opportunities like on Vine and things of the like that are, about 6 seconds. So there's all these different places where you could be sharing video about your particular school and or program.
So I would add to
yeah.
I was going to add to the video piece that, when you're thinking about video, a lot of times people will just think about the high-end production, right? And, oh, well, we can't do that because we can't afford it. I think that one of the things that some of the schools that we've seen and what they're doing, much more on the short video side and the iPhone, right? They're at events at the school. They're doing things at the school. And you can collect a lot of interesting video snippets and video clips that you can use. You know, if you're thinking about, well, how can I incorporate visuals, whether it be video or other kinds of imagery, photography, for example, of kids in the schools, you know, that's one thing. You need to make sure that you have releases. And typically every school, at least schools that I know of, when a student registers and enrolls in the school, they have to sign a release form. That means that their image may be used and parents can opt out at that time. So you just need to be aware of that. But typically most parents will sign those, and it's a really good way to add these video snippets to what's going on in your school. And video, as Michael has said, is very, 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 very interesting to users online, and most people will watch that little video snippet.
Yeah, and there's a ton of editing tools that are free or for a minimal investment, $1 to $5, that can also be downloaded from either one of the app stores that are available on the phones, where you can do just as good with a few clicks and with some animations that are already built in. You can build a really interesting video right from just recording it on your phone and actually producing it and editing it right in your phone. So this doesn't have to require that big investment unless you've got the dollars to do it and have got a really interesting idea. But this can be done in a variety of really inexpensive and creative ways without a ton of investment, both dollar-wise and time-wise too.
So I just want to recognize that we're at the 10 o'clock mark, but you know, for those of you who can stay on a few more minutes, we have just a few more things to go through. And for those of you who would like to know whether or not you can access the presentation, you'll be getting an email later today, and you'll have a link to download the presentation as well. So go ahead, Mike.
Yep. So yeah, there's just a few tactics that we wanted to touch on. And all of these tactics are going to require hard investment dollars. So that's why we didn't want to spend too much time on them, but we at least wanted to address them. So these are things that you can utilize if you have available budget and you're thinking about potentially doing additional sort of more sophisticated tactics. One of those being pay-per-click advertising. Of course, these are the paid listings that happen on Google or the other search engines, where you can actually pay to have your ad show up for a specific set of key terms. This works as a bidding process, right? You're paying to be displayed there, and it works the way that this works. So how you actually pay for these is on as it says, a pay-per-click basis. There's also other pricing models such as cost per 1,000 impressions, but we won't get into that. But suffice it to say, this is another way that you could compete for some of those more popular terms that may have better competition or schools that have been in the market for a while, so that you can get some visibility from a search perspective. Here's just some examples that you see here for science-based charter school Phoenix. You can see some of the ads here on both the left-hand side and the right-hand side on how they're displayed within both the desktop and a PC context. Other opportunities you have are display or what's called banner advertising. I'm sure we've all seen a banner ad in our lives over the last 15 to 20 years on the web. These are other ways that you can actually generate interest around your school. Just keep in mind that people are largely tuned out of looking at banners these days. These banners get a really low click-through rate, but they can work in interesting ways from a brand building perspective. So if your school's getting really great press, maybe this is a way to reinforce some of those opportunities, but it does help from a brand awareness perspective. You can also do a variety of the same targeting things by targeting people by geographic locale, targeting specific websites that you would like your banners to show on, and a variety of time of day, time of year. All of those different opportunities exist as well for banners. The last tactic that we'll touch on really quickly is called retargeting. So this is exactly what it sounds like. You are retargeting someone that's either come to your website or shown interest in your school in the past in some sort of digital way. So retargeting allows you as the advertiser as you as the school. If someone comes onto their website, you're dropping a cookie onto their browser or onto their device. And then when they're out in Facebook or whether they're out looking at headlines on your local newspaper or CNN or the like, they'll actually get served with an ad that you can fully customize and again target based on all those different factors from geolocation to time of day to different search terms. But it allows you to just spend dollars on people that are interested in your particular brand or in your school. Retargeting is available on most of the major social networks as well as on basically every single website that serves a banner or banner advertising, as we touched on before. So some resources that you can consider for any one of the things that we've touched on over the last hour or so, from an organic search or search engine optimization perspective. And we've linked all of these tools for you, so when you have the slides, you can click through and take a look. But there's Google Analytics has a certification that you can go do some training and actually get certified on. Moz, which is a search engine optimization software, which can help you optimize your website better for the search engines. We've also linked in here Google's Beginner's Guide to Search Engine Optimization as well. If you want some knowledge or additional learning around PPC, display, or retargeting, there's a variety of different resources here, beginner's guides, both certifications, as well as tips and different articles for creating things like effective display ads or your first retargeting campaign. We've also put in some additional resources around email and social media. So you've got links to MailChimp here, as well as Hootsuite, which is a really great platform you can utilize to manage your social profiles in all the social networks versus having to go to the individual ones. Some final thoughts on where to start. Augment your current marketing plan, as Kim sort of touched on at the beginning, right? Your digital tactics should really support your overall marketing objectives and/or strategy. Don't try and reinvent the wheel here. Try and augment what you're already doing and test it and see what works. Keep in mind that execution can be internal or external, right? You can work with internal resources, but there's a variety of external resources that you may be able to work with, whether it's an agency that does this, day in, day out, whether it's a parent or a community advocate that also does this on your behalf, whether it's reaching out to potentially a marketing program within a local community college or university that could take on your school as a client. There are a variety of ways to help get these activities done. Look for social advocates in community and parent groups. You never know. You could have a parent that has potentially, 1,000, 20,000, 2 million followers on some of these social networks that could be an advocate because their students having such a great experience in your school. And don't reinvent the wheel here. Try and test out new tactics and see how they work against your marketing objectives, see how they work for your enrollment objectives, and then add on additional budget and layer on from there. Anything to add, Kim?
No, the only thing that I would say is that, don't feel like you can't implement programs because you don't have a budget. I think that you should look at it in a different way. What things can I implement on my own with very minimal budget, and think of cost in two ways. Cost can be external resources that have a hard cost or tools that have a hard cost, but also think of cost in terms of time, right? So resources that you have internally, whether it be yourself or other members of your team, how can you implement some programs at minimal cost or meaning time, and then look at what hard costs are externally, and you can layer on top of that.
Great. So what to spend, different tactics that we've talked about, from email to SEO to PPC, all have different budgets. And when we sit about, that total investment, especially with some of the digital tactics that are available, right? Some of these things can be done in short time frames and with minimal dollars, and you can get them up and running right away, such as PPC ads or Facebook ads. But then search engine optimization is a long game, right? It's not just an initial investment of working on your website and the time and making adjustments, but it's also, something that you're continuing to optimize. So think about this as a total investment, not only just in time, especially if you're utilizing internal resources, but also in the dollars that you've got available to utilize. Some of the tactics require initial budgets as well as ongoing budgets, while others just require an initial budget. So just keep in mind, if you're going to be doing some of these tactics on a regular basis, as you're going through that budgeting thing, some of these tactics, such as search, can have a finite budget, a start and end, right? But if you're on an email platform that's got a monthly required account, or your website that's on one of these other platforms that we talked about, like Squarespace or Wix or something along the lines, those can have reoccurring costs. And just, you can think about, if you're thinking about, okay, where do we get these dollars from? To start, leverage your current marketing budget and potentially shift some dollars to test out different tactics, but you may want to think about adding to that overall marketing objective to be able to generate additional opportunities to utilize these tactics as well. Anything else, Kim?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, perfect. Well, Thank you again for having me, Kim and Stuart and the Charter School Capital team. I'm going to let you guys wrap it up for us.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for taking the time and listening to this presentation. You know, Michael and I are more than happy to answer any questions that you might have post-webinar. Feel free to reach out. We can answer what we can for you, point you in the right direction. Again, the presentation will be available to everybody after the webinar. You'll be receiving an email and with information on how to access the information. And keep an eye out. We will be planning on having additional webinars in the future. You know, some topics like social media we'll definitely dive into for a full webinar, but there'll be others as well. And we look forward to seeing you again on another webinar. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.